different. And we're just glad to offer this second session. Again, this is a session that's being hosted by the Kentucky chapter of the Percussive Arts Society. We want to thank them for their support of this event and also all they do to help support this chapter. We also just want to mention a couple things that are coming up. Number one, the Percussive Arts Society International Convention, the 50th anniversary is coming up in just like 3 weeks. So it is happening really quickly. November, I think 11th. I want to get the date right. November 12th is the Wednesday through the 15th or 16th. So it's going to be a fantastic event, and definitely couldn't recommend PASIC highly enough for anybody who can make it up there. The other thing that we want to put on your radar that we talked about last time is the Kentucky Day of Percussion that we're going to bring back here in Lexington, and that is going to be on Saturday, March 7th. So if you want to put that in your calendars, it's going to be a great opportunity. We've got some fantastic guests already planned, and it's just going to be a great day. And so that's kind of the important things to note going on right now. Rick's got the West Kentucky Percussion Festival that he's been advertising for a while. That is on what day is that?
21st.
21st.
March 21st.
March 21st. So got a lot of great Kentucky things happening depending on where you're at in the state. So March 21st and March 7th, some good things. Like we were talking about earlier, everyone now has an opportunity to unmute themselves. So as we're talking today, we welcome any questions, feedback, thoughts, comments that you have as we go. We spent the last session talking about the primaries almost exclusively with the composers. Those videos are still available. We're going to send those out to anybody who's signed up for these days. And so if you didn't sign up for the first one, and you still want to hear Chad Floyd talk about his piece, we're going to send you that YouTube link too. And so you'll be able to get access to all of the things we talked about last time, even if you couldn't make it. And also we're recording today, and we might be able to clip this together and send it your way. And so we wanted to first talk about the secondary etudes. What we wanted to do is start with just the secondary etudes, and more importantly, start with the unifying accessory instruments. I think it's really easy to forget about those really important instruments and focus all your time just on the primary. And then you forget some of the really important things like making a great sound on crash cymbals, making a great sound on triangle, and then your secondary instrument like the xylophone or the snare drum. And then also some sight reading things too. But today we want to focus on just some fundamental skills that I think can really help you with the crash cymbals and the triangle. And then I've got Josh and Rick here who can kind of chime in as they hear things and want to talk through some things. But I wanted to start with just some really simple concepts on crash cymbal first. Is that okay? Got a head nod. Okay. And this won't take forever. We'll get into some other, all right, thank you. This won't take forever, but I do want to talk through some simple things. First off, I want to talk about my general approach to making a crash cymbal sound. And to do this, my 6-month-old is asleep upstairs, so I'm not going to grab crash cymbals right now. But I'm going to show you kind of how I practice crash cymbals. And this is something you can do at home as well. You can either do this while you're sitting down. You can do this standing up. I'm going to try and stand up here just for a second and see if you all can see me a little bit. Can you still see me okay? And so the way that I do general crashes, I relax my upper body. And I'll bring my non-dominant hand, this is my left hand, I'll bring my non-dominant hand up to my belly button, and it's just sitting there nice and relaxed. So I'm not tense, I'm just keeping it up here. And then I bring my dominant hand right on top, and once we get some crash cymbals in hand, it'll make more sense. The basic premise of my crash is a breath and a drop. And if you notice, the left hand falls underneath, and it's not a slam or a smash, it's a breath and a fall, and the left hand kind of reacts underneath that. And so I'm not trying to kind of push and do a lot of extra motion vertically. I'm actually letting gravity do most of the work, and I'm just falling down. And if you look at the etude, let me see if I can pull that up for just a second.
Hopefully everybody's doing that. I see Braden with his camera on. Hopefully everybody's doing that. I'm doing it.
And I just want to show one thing really quickly before I keep going. And so right away, the first thing that you have on crash cymbals is just a big full crash. And it's important that you get the timing right. It's important that you count the rests. But it's also important that the first thing you do on a crash cymbal is a beautiful full crash sound. And so if you walk in there and you're like, 1, 2, 3, 4, crash, you get a really rough, aggressive sound as opposed to 1, 2, 3, breathe down. And you can get a really nice, full, rich sound right away because it's not about speed. We'll talk about speed in a second, but just in terms of just getting that initial fall sound, it allows the cymbals to crash together. And a bit of advice that was given to me for crash cymbals: you don't need to force two pieces of metal together to make a big sound. Your job with crash cymbals is to let those cymbals fall into each other so that the metal resonates as opposed to punches, especially when we're talking about a crash, like a concert crash. If it's in marching band, it's a completely different story. But for this, we're trying to make a warm, rich sound right away. And so that's kind of the first principal concept, is just that lift and drop. Now, from there, we have to talk about a few more details about the grip, and then also how we set the cymbals up. Is it vertical? Is it horizontal? Or is it kind of somewhere in between? And to do this, I'm going to share my screen for a second. I made a video, and it's a video I made a while ago, back when I was the vice president in Tennessee, and also working at ETSU. But I think the crash cymbal concepts are really helpful in demonstrating kind of what my vision of a crash is and how it can help, and some exercises in there too. But I won't spend the whole time on that video. But here's this video. I'm going to share the sound. And I've skipped ahead for a second because we've already talked about that fundamental motion. But I do want to talk about the grip for a second. And it's helpful so you can see a cymbal. Can you all see this video? Let's do a sound check here.
Yes. The next thing I want to talk about.
Does that work okay? Perfect. So this is me showing a video of me talking about cymbal grip for just a second, but there's a couple key components in here. So let's take a watch for a second.
Is the grip. So let me grab a cymbal here. And for each of these cymbals, what we're going to try and do is grab this grip as closely as possible to the bell of the cymbal, without actually touching the majority of the bell. The more you touch of the bell, the less resonance you get and the less low overtones in the crash cymbal. And so that makes your sound much brighter and sharper. And two pieces of metal don't need to be any louder. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our fulcrum, or the gripping point that we use for any snare drum stick or things like that, and that's going to maintain itself as we go onto this cymbal strap. And so I'm going to just flip my hand over, and I'm going to try and grab as close as I can to the bell and squeeze.
And I'll pause for just a second. And so the hand is upside down here, but what we're not going to do is we're not going to put our hand inside the cymbal strap like a marching cymbal. But do you see how close the index finger and thumb is to the bell? That's a key component of holding the cymbal so that it resonates. A lot of times we try and grip with the back part of the hand. We try and grip with the back fingers because it's easier to hold it. But what you want to do is start the grip there and then use the back fingers for support, not the other way around.
As much as I can to hold that, and then the back fingers can support that grip as well. A lot of times we do the opposite. We grab from the back and then we use our thumb to control that bell, and that eliminates some of the better overtones of this crash cymbal. And so we don't want that. We want this sound to be lush, and so to do that we have to get our hands off of the cymbal, and so you want to grab as closely as possible. And so now we can combine these two ideas of the motion of this crash along with the grip to start and work on our first crash.
So if you watch, it's just a breath and fall. The left hand reacts down. And it's hard to tell volume-wise. Those are super loud. I'm not trying to press them down. I'm lifting and I'm allowing the cymbals to crash together. One thing I do want to pause at is the angle of the cymbals. And so it's about a 45-degree angle. That way the cymbals don't necessarily, I'm not trying to slide or slice the cymbals, but I'm trying to just fall directly down. But I don't want to necessarily be flat because then I'll slide down. And I don't want to be horizontal because then I can get an air pocket. And so I change the angle, and then I also offset the cymbal by about an inch. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Can you see the little arrow? Yeah. And so I offset the cymbal by about an inch. Those two things allow, the angle and the offset allow for me to avoid the air pocket. I'm not worried about creating a flam. Has anybody been told when you play a crash cymbal you need to do a flam? That's great advice. That's true. You don't want them to hit exactly at the same time. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to think to myself, flam, because then I end up going bottom top and it creates a big open sound that doesn't sound smooth and consistent. And so I am getting a flam, low high. However, my focus is on the breath. And what happens if you watch my top hand, when I lift, it automatically does this wave. If you just go breath, drop, the cymbal automatically does this. If you try and control it, then it's real tense. But that's not a breath. Breath, drop. And if you do that, you kind of see my hand wave almost. The cymbal does the same thing. And I'll go back to that video really quick one more time, just so you can see that cymbal motion do the same thing. I don't think I shared the sounds, but that's okay. Imagine a beautiful crash. And so the bottom of my cymbal is hitting first, but I'm not thinking about that. I'm just lifting and dropping. I feel like that's a terrible angle. If I would go back to 2017 me, I would change that. But the second angle is a better one right here. So we're at a 45-degree angle, slightly offset, and it's just a lift. And when I lift, the cymbals are going to naturally rotate. And then the bottom hand catches the cymbal. So that's my general approach to a loud general crash. That works for mezzo forte, forte, fortissimo. The louder I am, the more I lift. So, it's the simple thing like height, not might. I don't need to play any harder. I just need to lift a little higher and let gravity do a little bit more work. That works for most general crashes. 2 bits of advice that I'll give you, and then I'll open it up to anyone else because I've talked for way too long. The 2 bits of advice are, 1, if you're playing rhythms, change that angle slightly and use your dominant hand. So instead of like a clapping monkey, or like those cymbal monkeys, you want to use that dominant hand. And so if you look at the etude, where is that at? Now I've got too many windows open. The etude has this 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1. That's piano, which leads me to my second tip, which is when you play softer, you also can change that angle so I have less gravity. So when I play really soft crashes, I'm just using my right hand and just basically kissing the cymbals vertically in front of me. And then as it gets louder, then I can change the angle more and then go back to my dropping. But for this etude, it's going to be 1 and 2, 1 and 2, just my dominant hand. 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1, right? And so we get that nice big full crash once we get out of that crescendo. So rhythms, we want to keep it one hand, and then soft crashes, you want to keep it horizontal, and that'll allow you to have a lot more control and not worry so much about trying to be super soft because it'll automatically do that. Those are my big cymbal tips. Josh and Rick, is there anything you want to add or talk about?
Are you going to get into the specifics of that excerpt? Like there are a couple things I wanted to touch on, but if you're
Please
going to
do, please. Yeah, if you want to do that, or I can
under, I
share
guess
this.
I could. So you got the first 2 bars, it's 2 crashes. What do you all think you should do during that rest? Unmute real quick and just have you all thought about it, or what do y'all think?
I think you should mute the crashes.
I agree. Yes, absolutely. And that can be a real easy thing where you pull it into your body, crash. I forgot the tempo of it, probably digga digga digga, maybe something like that.
It's like
Okay,
132, so it's quick.
so I say you're looking sideways. Don't take the cymbals very far away from your body. Keep them close to your body. So crash, crash, mute, crash. Do that second crash after the rest really close to your body because you got to mute it again. You just want to be real efficient with your movement there. And as a judge, don't go in and, blowing the roof off with the volume of that first one, but make sure you're gonna do a big difference between your first crash and that piano that comes 5 bars later. If you can show like a really wide spectrum of volume as a judge, I'd be real impressed. I was like, oh, okay, they know what they're doing. You know what I mean? You've taken the musicality part of crash cymbals into account.
Awesome. Scarlett has a question. Do you want to ask that question, or was that something else?
So, this might sound really redundant,
It's
but
okay.
the tempo on like both secondaries are different. Is that intentional?
You mean
Because
from
on
the
the
top portion to the bottom portion?
no, I mean on the keyboard secondary and the snare secondary, the tempo is different.
But it's the
Oh,
same music.
interesting.
Is that intentional?
I'm certain it's intentional. I can't speak for KMEA, but I'm guessing it has to do with the challenge of the snare drum part being more difficult and needing to be at 120 than because the triangle part is 116 on both. But the snare drum part probably needed to be a little slower to make it a little bit more manageable versus the mallet part, which they probably have a slight difference. The big difference there would be how quick you have to mute, but everything else would be about the same. The difference from 120 to 132 is not, or 136 is not hugely drastic when it comes to that crash cymbal part.
Okay. I that probably sounded really redundant, but I was just curious
It's a
about it.
great
That's a good
question.
question.
Looks like it's based off of what your primary is. And if your primary is mallets, then you can burn through a faster top hat or, or yeah.
I think it's playable either way, so but it's a good point.
It does bring up a really good point in terms of if you're doing both, like if you're doing snare and mallets, you do have to be able to be flexible with that secondary, because the crash cymbal will be not only will the crash cymbal feel slower, but also the transition to the triangle will feel very different. Because when you go from 120 to 116, that's basically no change at all. You just kind of like ease on the brakes. Like if you've been driving and if you're about to drive, here's some advice. Before you slam on the brakes, you let go of the gas. And so when you do that in a car, you're not immediately stopping, but it does kind of slow down a little bit because of the friction. And so, as you're, 100 feet from the stop sign, you want to start slowing down, maybe even slower if you're, learning to drive in the rain. Driving advice. Any other good questions about the crash cymbal excerpt? It's a great question, Scarlett.
No,
Yeah,
but thank you
Braden.
for the driving advice.
So on the part where like crescendos from like in between like the piano to the mezzo forte, how do you think we should like adjust the angle of the cymbals so like it should be like, should it be like the transition be something like that?
I'll give my answer and then I'm eager to hear what anyone else has to say. The way I would approach this is start almost horizontal for the first bar, 1 and 2. And then for the second bar, slowly go to about 30 degrees. I know I'm being really picky, but then by the mezzo forte, I'm at 45. And so it's like 0 degrees, move to 30, and then 45. Because if you go too quick and the tempo is fast, you'll end up getting flammy sounds and it'll sound like cha-cha-cha, ra-ra-ra, as opposed to cha-cha-cha, cha-cha-cha-cha. And so that's kind of my approach, but I'm eager to hear what Josh or Rick would recommend.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would
That's
do.
good.
Yeah. I think it'd be a natural progression with it being this fast. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, just a natural progression to that steeper angle to let gravity help you let gravity do some of the work of making it louder.
It's great advice. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's move, if we're okay, and we can ask questions later too if they come up, but let's move into the triangle for a split second.
I want to say something before we get into
please.
that.
Yeah.
I'm curious how many people have done second round that are here tonight.
We got
That have done
Braden,
first round or second round.
Quentin, and Allison. All right.
All right. He's fixing to talk about triangle, and it made me think about it. You need to make sure you know where your stuff is. When you go in to set up your room and you're counting your rest and then you're getting ready, oh, where did I put my triangle beater? Where are my xylophone mallets? So when you go into the room, take the time. Don't take long, but take the time to have everything set up the way you want it set up. You're playing. If the snare drum's too high, fix it. Make sure you bring your own mallets. I've been there many times and some kid comes to the door. Are there mallets in there? You just bring your mallets. Whatever you have to play, make sure you have that. But my point is that before you do anything, make sure you know where your stuff is. And then once you get ready to play, that's just not a thing. You're ready to go.
Amazing advice. I think that's super helpful for anybody taking auditions. And I would say that parallels to if you go and do college auditions. Before you start, make sure you're comfortable and you know where things are. Thanks, Rick. Shall we go into triangle for a second? All right, we got some. All right, so I'm going to try and do this really briefly because I realize I talk way too much on crash cymbals. But I think crash cymbals, it's really hard to get a great sound. And so you want to make sure you spend some time figuring out how to get that sound. Triangle, it's also challenging to get a good consistent sound. So my video might be mirrored here, but I've got a triangle here. And Rick, real quick, does the player bring their own triangle for this?
There's probably one in the room, but I would bring one I'm used to playing on.
Yeah, okay, that's really, really good advice. So if you can borrow one from your school that you know about, that you have a good clip, I'm sure the one they provide will have a clip that's decent, but making sure that you have a good clip, a great triangle that you know how it sounds and feels, and then a beater that you really like too, because all of those things drastically impact your sound, and a bad clip can ruin a really expensive triangle. And a bad beater can ruin a really expensive triangle and a really expensive clip. And
Yeah,
so,
let me say, they may, if they borrow one from the school, even if they have a triangle, the beater may not be what you need. And I figure you're going to talk about that in it, but the beater you select to play this with is important too.
yeah, for sure. And so, and sometimes you don't have access to a ton of different beaters, but you want to be comfortable with the beater you're using. If you have a beater that's just a simple metal rod by itself, and all it is a metal rod, okay, you can work with that. It may not be the most ideal to get a resonant sound out of the triangle, but at least you can practice with it and you know what you're used to. I've got here, I think this is a Black Swamp Spectrum teardrop beater. I like these kinds of beaters mostly because it's a softer metal at the top, so that when I hit the triangle, it's not as articulate unless I want it to be. And so using any sort of mallet, like Stessel makes beaters like this, Grover has beaters like this, so it's not a company specific thing, but something that has a softer metal is helpful. I'm just going to talk about a couple things, but Allison, I'm going to let you go ahead and ask your question.
I know there's two kinds of those like triangle beaters. Which one do you have, or which one do you recommend?
This is the teardrop version. And so there are two types of these spectrum beaters, I think. One is like a weighted brass that is more of a cone or a cylinder shape. And
Mm-hmm.
this actually teardrops down into a smaller point. And so if I were going to recommend one beater, it would be this teardrop beater because they're super expensive. But I like these because if I want to roll on the triangle, I can get really close to the edge and use the tiny part, or I can use the big part and get a really big roll. And so it allows me to have basically 4 different beaters in one without having to change beaters. And I can be really dynamic with this. I think I could be pretty dynamic with another one too. My advice is to use the heaviest beater you can get away with, because then you can get a really rich resonant sound on the triangle. But if it's too heavy and you can't get a good piano sound, like at the very end of this, you got 3 Ps. You want to make sure that you can really get a tiny sound. A lot of times we end up using a really tiny stick, but then the triangle doesn't sound like a triangle. If you use a really tiny stick, it sounds soft, but it's not really a triangle at that point. It sounds just like a teeny tiny piece of metal hitting a triangle as opposed to getting the overtones you want. So that's why I would kind of recommend at least this kind of beater. I also like the Stessel beaters that have that are just a cone shape or a cylinder, excuse me. But real quick, you kind of have 2 options when you play a triangle, and I apologize for the sound. It's not ideal, but I'm going to turn my original sound for musicians on. You have 2 options. You can play triangle at the bottom, and again, this is my left hand, so it's mirrored. I wonder if I should unmirror this video. Let me see if I can be smart enough to do this.
We're
Video
looking at it
settings.
correctly.
No, we're
You're
looking
looking
at it's right.
It's right. Okay, great.
It's
So
correct.
this is my left hand,
Correct.
right? And this is my right
That's right.
hand.
Correct.
And so you'll notice that the open end of the triangle will go away from my right hand. And that's important for a lot of reasons. But when I play a roll, I almost always play down here between these 2 sides. You can play a roll up here too, but I find that I can't get it as loud. And this is mezzo forte. And so I want it to be relatively confident. And so I'm going to kind of have this down here playing back and forth. Now, to get a articulated sound, I want to be perpendicular to the triangle. So that means for a roll, I want the opposite. So I'm going to drop my hand slightly and get a steeper angle on this triangle. So you kind of see, this is me trying to be articulate, which is a cool trick, but we don't need that for this etude. I'm going to drop my hand down, and that's going to allow me to get more overtones in the triangle, as opposed to kind of holding it up top and being more articulate. So that's a trick to get a more overtones, is to lower the hand a little bit, and that way you get a different angle. So for the roll, I'll play down here. For articulate passages, I like to play up here on the side and get really flat to the triangle. The more I angle, the more overtones I get. It's really hard to do this. I imagine that doesn't sound great, but really articulate triangle sound, I angle, more overtones. You can also do the same thing down here at the bottom, but typically when I play in the bottom, I get a little more overtones. And so for something like this particular etude, where I've got to play really rhythmically, I'm going to play up here and try and get really articulate sounds. And then maybe I'll change my angle for the diminuendo. Then go back. Right? And then I can curl to the edge of that beater as I get really soft. So a couple specific things for that etude, but also just general triangle playing. If I'm going to play one note, I'm going to play down here. But for something super rhythmic, I want to try and find the right sound on the triangle so I could be really articulate. And that's why it's so helpful to have your own triangle, or at least one that you're used to. Okay. I'll mention one other thing too. I'm kind of an anxious person, and so I actually would figure out the roll speed and figure out how to, and I would practice it really slowly. For me, I'm going to do 30-second notes. So it's going to be 1 E and a 2. 1 E and a 2. And so I know what that's going to be like fast. And so 1 E and a 2. And so I'll actually, I keep track of that because I know, and I can use the bottom to keep my rhythm, which is 4 notes. 1 E and a 2. 1 E and a 2. And then the upbeats are in the space. And I can do that because I like to practice roll speeds really slow, but I don't want to practice this like 1, 2, 3. That doesn't really help me keep my time and keep my rhythm. 1, 2, 3, and then as it gets faster, that becomes. Does that kind of make sense? So I like to, your roll speed might need to be a little bit slower. Maybe you have really great finger strength and you can do that much faster. But it's helpful to be consistent with that because you're doing it twice in a row and you don't want it to sound different. And also that can help you figure out where 116 is, because that's kind of a random, just like new tempo. Rick, anything you want to add?
I've had students bring in suspended triangles and play with 2 beaters, and I had a student ask me about this, so I played it. I really don't think it's necessary for this particular piece, but some people, I have seen it done.
I completely agree with that just in terms of the tempo. Real quick, what Rick's talking about is if I had a second clip here, I could put a clip on and hang it like this. And honestly, it makes the rhythms easier. It makes going 1 and or 3 and 1 and a 2 and pretty easy. However, it makes the rolls less consistent and resonant. You don't get that nice, real fast, rich roll because it's muting a little bit of the triangle. And so at 116, I think you can kind of get a lot of these because it's only a 5-stroke that you got to do. And advice on that is just not tensing up your wrist and allowing your fingers to help. When I play triangle, my grip actually ends here. And I use my middle finger to just play. I don't use the triangle on my full hand. I let the weight of the mallet fall forward, and that allows me to use that ring finger as sort of like a trigger, like I would playing like marching snare. And I only need five of those to get through this. So I would practice like one, two, three, four, five. I might actually practice eight of them. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. And that way, by doing five in a row, it's not so bad. But that's just me. You can hold the triangle clip a little bit farther back if you want more control. I just like to have a heavier front end, and so I put the triangle beater as far back in my hand as I can.
I got one thing. So as y'all are thinking about, you're competing and you're trying to set yourself ahead of all of these other people. As a judge, if everybody is really, really close as far as how they play it and their dynamic presentation and all of that, one of the things that bumps somebody up on our lists is if they keep consistent time through the rests. So
Yes.
it sounds kind of goofy, but make sure you practice that and maybe record yourself just on your phone or something real casual and then play and then count the rests
Yeah.
as you're changing implements and then listen back to it and see if you can kind of keep track of it. So sometimes that's the deciding factor.
Yeah.
If like they sound great, well, who was better during the rest? Okay, well then they get it.
Now I guarantee you the judges are counting the rest.
Oh yeah. It's sort of
Would
like a
you
game. We want to see who can get it.
would you recommend that the students practice like vocalizing that in practice, so you actually count out loud to externalize that a little bit in practice?
I could see where that'd be beneficial. I
Yeah.
mean, students, what do you all think? Yeah, I say do that and make sure you listen back to it and then try to do it silently, or maybe just one of each measure. Like I'm looking at the four bars before triangle, but for example, maybe one, two, 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 three, two, four, two, and then you could cut it down to every beat one, 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 and then maybe every other measure, one, switch, switch, one, switch, 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 play, just to kind of wean yourself off of that. And then eventually, hopefully, you'll internalize it enough and it'll be spot on.
I want to point out one thing that you did I think is really helpful is count when you're switching to. Like give a beat to when so you're going to mute on one here. And if you guys can see the music right now, we've got the crash. It doesn't have a LV, let ring. It doesn't have that here. So it means we should mute here. And so you can do a hard mute in time to help keep yourself in time. And then figure out when you're going to put the crash cymbals down. Mute, two, drop, two, pick up, triangle, here we go. Oh, it's 4 4 4 4. So mute, two, drop the crash, here we go, ready to start the pick
It's
up
two
the
four. Yes.
triangle. Oh no, I was right. Okay, yeah. So it's a
Yeah,
really
you're
quick
right the first time.
transition. So it's quick. So mute, two, drop, crash, pick up, triangle, play. That's it. And being able to actually have that little mini song in your head. It sounds silly, but some version of that will help you transition and make sure you maintain time because it's a really quick transition.
Real quick, since we're talking about transitions, you might want to bring a towel. And when you're counting those rests, how are you going to put those cymbals down and not make any noise? And how are you going to put that triangle down and triangle beater without making any noise? It makes a difference if you can do it.
Yeah, great advice. Jonathan, go ahead.
So I have a few questions because I've only really done middle school audition all state auditions. So when you're transitioning from the like main etude, do you have to count through that, or do they like give you some time?
Oh,
No,
from
they'll
main
tell you.
etude to the
They'll tell you just to
secondary.
move to the other instrument, and as soon
Oh,
as you're ready, you may begin.
okay,
Do they
cool,
do it in the same room for the second round?
Same room.
Okay.
cool. Thanks.
Good question.
Yeah. What other questions do you have, Jonathan?
I was gonna ask one more. Uh, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot.
That's okay. If you think of it, feel free. And we're all really friendly people. If you have
Yeah,
questions that are specific to any of us or the people that were here last session, just send it to us. We'd be happy to help you anytime,
cool. Thank you.
And I
of
would I
course.
would looking at the secondary etude, I would set it up as you practice in your own band room, set it up sort of however makes sense to you. I would suggest like left to right, like you read a book. Xylophone, and then to the right of the xylophone is your table for the crash cymbals, and to the right of that is your stand and towel and everything for triangle. And when you walk into the room, take that extra 10.5 seconds and move it around so that it's your version of the etude. You want to eliminate any guesswork and eliminate any surprises.
Yeah, great advice. Any other thoughts or questions about kind of, I know we didn't talk about the specific for each one, but we're happy to answer some questions about the secondary etudes first. Scarlett, go ahead.
Okay. This might just be like my interpretation of this, but those rests from going to crash to triangle, is that assumed for like the tempo not to slow down until you get to the 3/4 section?
Correct, correct. So
Okay.
it would need a rallentando or a written, and so it's an instantaneous. So the judges will be keeping track at the tempo. So if you're a snare primary at 132, if you're a mallet primary, it'll be at 120, and then immediately tempo shift, drop right away once you hit the triangle.
Okay.
Great question. Um, any other question? I know we talked a lot about the crash and the triangle part. That's just the unifying part because we're all here together. Braden, go ahead.
So when you have the quarter note rests in the triangle portion, is that asking us to like mute the triangle there?
That's a great question. Josh is nodding yes. I would say there may be some level of interpretation. I think you can musically decide, and if you're muting on the rest and the crash symbol, which I think makes a lot of sense, then I think it parallels really nicely to also mute. And so if you mute on a triangle, the way I hold the triangle, imagine you're holding a cup of hot chocolate, and you're going to put the clip in between your index finger and your middle finger, that front end, and then your thumb goes underneath the backside. Sorry, I'm trying to visualize this. Thumb goes underneath, and so your clip is going to go in between. And so right now the clip is between my index and my middle finger, and I've got my cup of coffee here, and so I can use my ring and pinky to mute the rest of that triangle right on that rest. Yeah, and it doesn't have a let ring notation, so I think you would want to mute both on beat 2 of the last line and the final beat 2 after the pianissimo 2.
All right, cool.
Again, that's another deciding factor. Who paid attention to more of the details? Okay, then they get bumped up the list.
That's a good point. Thank you.
All excellent questions. I'll mention a few things really quickly just for everybody's hopefully benefit when it comes to the mallet part of the snare secondary and the snare part of the mallet secondary. So I'm just going to pull up the snare secondary for a second, which is the mallet part. And a lot of this is just being comfortable playing these certain kind of E flat, playing an E flat major, getting some scales, moving light across the instrument. But as Josh mentioned earlier, being really dynamic is key. Having a forte sound that goes into a piano, being really kind of drastic with that, but saving your forte because it's not the loudest you're going to play. The loudest you're going to play is here as you cadence in this fortissimo. And so making sure that your forte isn't so loud that you have nowhere higher. I would recommend a slightly hard rubber mallet or a very soft plastic mallet. If you use something harder than that, you might feel a little isolated. And so there's no mallet choice here, but I like an OS1 or a Red Ross, somewhere along those lines where it's not super brittle because you've got these rolls in here and double stops. You can actually be resonant with some of those softer things, and it doesn't go too high on the xylophone. If you're practicing, you'll notice that this C is the lowest you go. On a xylophone that's a standard range that goes down to an F, this is your lowest C on the instrument. So that can make sure you're not in the wrong octave when you start this. This F is not the very lowest F, but it is the second F on the keyboard. And that makes sure you're not too high. If you start too high, you'll end up missing this G. That won't be, you'll have some notes that won't fit on the instrument. And then just same comment about roll speed, figuring out what rolls you really want to do. That might end up being a sextuplet, and I'll try and really process. Yes, I'm rhythmicizing it, giving it some rhythm, but it also helps keep me in time when I'm rolling. Any questions about the snare mallet part? That was really confusing. Any part about playing this xylophone excerpt? Braden, go ahead.
How would you say, like, say I use like the Becker blues, like how do you think those would fall under like
Yeah,
good
those are
mounts to
good.
use for that?
Becker blues are really comfortable and they're a little harder, but if you're comfortable playing with those and you feel like you can get a good dynamic spectrum, which those mallets are really great, I think those would work great.
Yeah. I also ordered some of the Maltech rubber mounts too, so that
Play with it, figure out what's going to get the best xylophone sound. Becker blues give a really traditional xylophone sound, and so if you played with those in the second round, people would not you would certainly not lose any points. But
right.
if you end up getting a really tense roll sound, you may try a hard rubber.
Oh yeah. Might be something to experiment. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're using rubber mallets, are they too soft to get this high A flat? That's something you want to pay attention to. Other questions? Okay, let's shift over really quickly to the mallet secondary. Some of this is tricky because of the rudimental language for a blind audition, but some bits of advice, follow the same rules. Number one, be drastic with your dynamics so you can show a difference between brata, brata, right here in the second measure, or da, da, tiga, tiga, soft. Make sure that piano is real soft. I would also really figure out what your roll speed is. For this, a duple roll will be fine. So like for this, I will think to myself, one and three E and three E and that. So figuring out my roll speed. And for mallet players, this fivelet can be really tricky. But when you play fives, it's helpful to just have a syllable that works for you. Opportunity, 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 one. And so making sure you're not just throwing your hands and hoping that they're in time. And noticing the accents though. You could do a sticking that allows you to keep the accents on the same hand. Right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, left, left, right. That works perfectly fine. I think alternating also works. But if you do a right, left, right, left, left, you just want to make sure you don't end up doing one and two is a da, 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 but rather keeping a consistent opportunity, opportunity, one. This is important from the Delacluse side of things. These flams don't have accents on them. And so make sure that you don't play ra, but rather that note is very close to this note, primary note to primary note. So just because it's got a grace note on it doesn't mean it's loud. Same thing here. This is only a piano, and so it's important that you get this drag low. I would play that drag with one hand, left, left, right, or right, right, left, but keep that note low and not accented. Any questions about the mallet secondary on snare drum? Oh, go ahead, Scarlett.
Okay, so the way that I'm interpreting a few parts, let's say like measure one, for example.
Yep.
It's going from mezzo forte to piano. Is that assumed to be subito?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so you want to practice. And I think a good tip is when you're playing dynamically on snare drum to use the playing zones on a drum. If you imagine my face to be a snare drum, it'd be a little ovular. But anyway, the center is right here. I'm playing over on this side. Your mezzo forte can be like, I don't know, 3 inches off the center, 2 inches off the center. Forte can be here. But then I never want to play dead center unless there's like a marcato or something really accented. So I'm gonna put my mezzo forte away from me here. But as soon as I play that piano, I'm gonna shoot to the edge, and so it'll be like da da jaga da da. And so you can use that position angle to help create more dynamic contrast. You just want to make sure you're not moving really fast, and that causes you to be louder. But it's something to practice. And a good way to practice that would be to put a beat of space in between and then get rid of the space. So I might practice one and ta 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 space, zat, da da zigga da move, space, zat, and then you get rid of the space, da da tigga tigga zat. And again, I'm pointing at my head because that's the snare drum.
And make sure
No, sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
make sure you all practice portions of this. Don't wait too long to practice it at tempo. Jump, jump, big it about, big it about, you know what I mean?
That's fast.
Yeah, yeah, that's 120. So just don't wait too long to practice it. Practice portions of it at tempo.
you need to learn to spend as much time at the beginning to learning this snare drum part. There's going to be a lot of people that go in there that can play the mallet part. And then there's going to be a lot of people that can't play the snare drum part. And
Hmm.
I'm talking about the secondary part of the mallet part. And that's really going to make a difference. And while I'm saying that, just so you know, in case you don't already, you cannot use your own snare drum. So don't even plan on it. So if you're standing outside the room with your snare drum, you don't get to take it in. So just don't be surprised when they say you can't bring your drum.
While we have this up, any questions? Quentin, go ahead.
I was just wondering what your all's thoughts were on. It looks like near the end of the snare drum portion, it puts mezzo forte twice. I was wondering if there's any difference between those or not.
Looking at that personally, I would just say no, no difference. Josh or Rick?
No,
Looks like a no
it's
oversight
just,
that they lifted on there.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
just
All right. Thank you.
complimentary dynamic.
Yeah, that's a great question, though. If you see something like that, it raises the red flag of why is this here, and could just be a missed oversight.
And make a decision how loud you're going to finish the snare drum excerpt. It's left up to interpretation. So just think about what musically makes sense to you and commit to it.
And I would caution I would caution slamming the drum. You know, if you can get up to forte fortissimo, great. Just make sure you're always making a good sound. Um, any other last minute questions on this one? Okay, Scarlett,
I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions. Okay,
go for it. That's why we're here.
so that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. On measure 7, where it's going like from the E and a 1 4 E and a
Yep.
no slight crescendo from that mezzo forte to forte, right? No like tiny crescendo up to that accent, or no?
I have a thought. I'm going to let Josh, because I keep talking first. I'm going to let someone else go first. Josh, you want to answer that thought?
Again, having judged this before, I give bonus points to people that interpret the music very black and white. If there's no crescendo written there, then don't do a crescendo because they do want to see how you do that. That's why they put the crescendos and decrescendo markings after that. So for me, I would want to demonstrate how you can do it subito because looking at it real quick, that's the second time that you'd have to go from mezzo forte to forte. So I want to see it more subito.
Yeah, I would just add to that. There's so many details in this
Mm.
that I think it's important that you don't add too much to this one because the composer really intended the dynamics to be specific.
I just always tell my students when you're doing the mallet piece in particular, or any mallet piece, do what you can do to let the judge hear your musicality. But when you're doing a snare drum piece, play what's on the page.
Hmm, that's good.
What other questions? We've got this up. We can switch to some other things really quickly, but last call on questions for the secondary on the mallets.
We got about 4 minutes.
Go ahead,
If I
Scarlett.
may, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So my interpretation of flams may be a little wrong. So for a blind audition, how close do you want it? Do you think a judge would want the flams?
Josh, you said you've judged this. I've judged the first. I guess did the second round before, but Josh, what have you noticed in the judging for that?
Uh, Make it obvious that it's a flam. I mean, you're in a classroom behind a screen, and so you don't have to do a lot of exaggeration as far as put a lot of separation. Ba-da, ba-da, ba-da. But I would make sure that it's clear that it's a flam, flam, sort of like you say the name, flam, flam, flam. You don't want to make it too tight, to where it sounds like an accident. You just want to make sure that it's obvious you're doing that. And I would say whatever you choose, keep it consistent. Try to keep it consistent. What about you, Rick?
I just think it's a matter of how you prep your hands before you play the flam. And just do it the same way. So keep that, if you're playing a right-handed flam, just keep that the left hand down and the right hand up to wherever it needs to go, and then when you reverse it, but just don't start off with both your hands up, because you probably won't get a good flam.
Yeah, keep that grace note real low. Josh said something great that I think is helpful in your sound. If you hear the word flam when you play a flam, you're in good shape. If you play falam, I think you're going to be really slow, and especially at 120, trying to go bradum, 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 bradum. If you try and open that up, bradum, bradum, it's going to slow you down. Or right here, and advice here, kind of based on what Rick was saying, keep your grace note one hand and keep your other note your dominant hand. And that way you've got two heights already, right, 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 or left, 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 left. And it'll allow you to kind of keep that a little bit more consistent too. Okay, we've reached our time. What I wanted to potentially offer for a second, because I know Quentin and Allison sent some videos. I don't want to take any more time from everybody, but I'm happy to kind of watch through some of these videos together that you sent on these primary etudes, just if anybody wants to leave, and I can offer some feedback on these mallet primaries. Did anyone else want to play anything today for some feedback? Braden, did you want to play your primary?
I was gonna play the snare drum secondary.
Okay. Do you have
I
that? Do you have a video of that, or do you have the
I
regular?
was gonna just like perform it live on the meeting.
Okay.
I don't have a xylophone, but I have a marimba, so I hope that's good enough.
Do you want to play that? We're kind of on secondary. Do you want to play that real quick for us?
Sure.
And again, it's 9 o'clock. If you got to roll, we've got people have families, you got things to do, but I do want to take at least 5 minutes or so to hear some of each of these comments and be able to give you a chance to play through it, and we can hear some of that. So if you want to get set up, Braden, we'll kind of roll with you, and then Quentin and Allison, I have your videos too. We can do quick watches and offer little bits of comments. If you can hang out. Oh, we hear you.
Cool.
Do you have your original sound for musicians on?
Yep.
Awesome. I wish I had a marimba like that in my house. Gosh.
Yeah.
All right, we're ready.
All right.
Great. Yeah, very nice. I'm sitting here counting the rests, waiting for you. Rick, Josh, do you want to start with a few comments or feedback?
Go ahead, Rick.
I heard most of it. The only thing I would say, of course, he's playing it on a marimba, is a little bit wider variation in your dynamics, louder louds and softer softs.
And again, if I know we still got some time, but if I'm choosing between the person in 5th place and the person in 6th place, I'm going to choose the person who got closer to the written tempo, because there are going to be people in there that play it here. And those are the people. It's like, okay, they got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again,
I do plan to get it like up to tempo, like work on getting that.
yeah, but no, you're doing the right thing. Starting slow to solidify it correctly, and even practice, like what Rick was saying, practice your dynamic range even at the slow version. Don't go slow and learn the notes and then go back and learn a next layer of musicianship. And this for everybody too. Practice all of the dynamics even when you start slow.
Yeah, all excellent advice. Things for you to keep working on as you get the speed up. My comment would just be make sure your roll speed works at 132. You know, if you're spending a lot of reps at playing 8s instead of 6s, that your muscles are going to have a hard time switching and figuring out what, 132 is here. 1, 2, 3. I think 6s make a lot of sense to me. You might get 7s, but it's fast. But on a xylophone, you might like that sound. But, So just figure out what that roll speed is. And then definitely don't rush at the end. It's really tempting. This is something that everyone's gonna do. You're moving on. You got all these 16 notes. You're crescendoing. And so just keep that tempo consistent as you go from those 16 notes to crescendo into 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, wherever you're at.
I'd say that's something that the judges will be listening specifically for, because all my students like to rush that into that.
Yeah. So Braden, I love that you played that for us. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, you're thanks, man.
Anybody else want to play live before I shift to maybe a Quentin video or Allison video? Rock, paper, scissors. Who's going to go first? We'll go Allison first. You won the rock, paper, scissors. Is that okay? Can you both stay on for another 2 or 3 more minutes after? I got one Allison. Okay, great. Thank you for your patience. Let me pull that video up. So, all right, here is, let's see, Allison's video. Can everyone see that okay? Here is, we'll get started. If you can't hear it, stop me. Yeah, great. Excellent. I'm going to pull up share the music for that for a second, just so if we have some specific things for this, let me grab that. In the meantime, Josh, Rick, if you want to start with a few comments.
You did
Go
a
ahead.
good job of making the phrases go across the bar line, like measure 10, da 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 da, brr, ga, 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 da dun dun da dun da dun. Yeah, segment it the way it looks visually, so that's always a really good thing. One thing that Chad talked about is think about what that's going to sound like when it's on a rosewood marimba, and don't let it freak you out. It's not going to be as ringy and resonant when you're doing it live. So just keep thinking about the musicianship that you've been doing, and let the sound sort of be what it is.
Yeah, I thought you did a really great job with some great musical moments, some good touch, like on the soft end here as you diminuendoed and played these chords here. I thought you could have done more on the ritardando a little bit to slow down just a bit into this. But I thought that was really good. One thing to watch as you're practicing is watch if you ever hit the nodes. You're so good at hitting in the center or the edge that we can really hear a couple of times, like during this pattern here when you play the E flat, I think, when you don't quite get the center. And so because you're so good at hitting in good playing zones, we hear some of those dead notes when they don't quite speak. Um, and make sure this rhythm here, measure 10 and 11, keeps that tempo going because you're coming out of these as if they're quarter notes, but we're still in that your speed was really good in the beginning, and this can get a little wide with those inner mallets. And so just make sure that it still keeps that tight kind of triplet feel and not opening up on that rhythm. I had 1 or 2 other comments. We kind of been harping on the same comments consistently today, but I think it's because they're the most important in being really successful in this, which is playing the page. Can you make this a true forte piano? Almost that we can't hear that second note, because you've dropped so much. Not so much that you don't play it, but really get out of the way and make sure it's not a forte mezzo forte, but like a forte piano. I like that you did a dead stroke here. I think Chad's video has him do that too. Did he talk about that in the session?
Yes.
Yeah, he did.
That's great. That's awesome. I did not do that, and I feel like I should. Timing comment: when you jump down here to this 16th note, keep the tempo going in your head. Bum ti dum ti dum da dum da dum da 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 dum jigga digga dum. Keep that driving eighth note pulse throughout, and then make sure you're not switching the rhythms in between. Digga digga da 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 da. Digga digga da 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 da. So it's really consistent there, and you're keeping the pulse as you switch. Um, Cautious not to rush this very end. You kind of rushed into that because of the roll. Make sure the roll doesn't start until beat two. But those are the really nitpicky things. But I think you're doing an amazing job with a lot of musicality, great tone. I like the mallet choice. I think it sounds really good. Braden, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. There's no retardando in like the last two measures, right?
There's no written retardando correct. That's again, that's one of those where if you want to be musical, personally, I wouldn't add that. But again, that's a personal preference. Did Chad talk about that at all in his session?
I don't remember.
Yeah, there's no written one, but I think you could argue that it's a musical choice to pull it back. I think this ending, and I talked to Quentin's school a while ago, just I think this ending is kind of triumphant, and so I think driving a little bit, da 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 bum, and it kind of ends with that. But personal preference. You might get a judge who says, "Well, it doesn't retardando, so it's a risk, but not a major risk. You're not going to lose just on that decision."
Okay.
Josh, do you want to add
I
anything to
remember we
that?
did cover this before in our lesson when I
Yeah.
shadowed you kid.
Josh, do you want to add anything to that comment? Just
No, I was looking to see from the notes from last time. Yeah, no, I'm good.
okay.
The only thing that stuck out was you did a really loose open roll when it was a
Measure
roll.
19.
Yeah, Rick, were you going to talk about that?
Yeah, well, that's all I was going to say. I was just would think about that roll speed at measure 19 there. Maybe a little faster.
Can you scroll it down? I want to see more. Okay. Okay. I'm good. Thanks.
Perfect. Yeah, some great playing and yeah, keep working on all those things. Allison, any questions from the feedback?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Yeah, nice
Awesome. No,
job.
thanks for putting that video together. All right, Quentin, you're up. Thank you for your patience. Again, thank you all for staying on it. We tried to do a hard 9 o'clock, but I think this is hopefully really helpful, and it's just fun to talk to you all about music. Here is Quentin playing.
Ooh, look at that Grand Imperial. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
video
that's
ended
good.
abruptly, but it's great.
Nice.
Should have shown that concert cymbal Jim Campbell video for the crash cymbals. All right, let's see. Quentin, wonderful job. I only have really one small comment for you that I would give as a bit of advice. I'm going to pull up the music for a second, then I'll toss it over to the others. If you look at this second page, measure 29, and this is advice for anybody, you're going from a high C, you know, down to this low F. And so the advice I would give is try and move your body as quickly as possible when you play that B, C, and you kind of put a lot of energy in shooting your body left sooner. So if you're a little bit behind, you're going to reach for that, and it's hard to play that soft, and it's either going to be inaccurate, loud, or your body's going to be out of balance. And so I would practice B, C shift, and be basically once I play the C, not before, because if you move too quick, you'll miss the C, but right as soon as I hit the C, I'm going to shoot my body with a big kick on my right foot and shoot my body left so that I'm ready for that low F, and practice doing that with a lot of energy. Not that I want to play fast or anything, but that way you're not slow to that F so that you get the rhythm there and the notes there as you reach down. That's my one comment. I thought the board sounded great. You sounded great. A lot of awesome things in that video. Josh, Rick?
I didn't have anything additional.
The only thing that I would say, in addition to, yeah, so many good things, good in your performance, try to make the accents a little bit more subtle. They sounded a little bit marching band, like 9 inches and 3 inches to me. Try to think about it as a little bit more like the spotlight is increasing in brightness a little bit when it comes to those accented notes, like what we're looking at in measure 25. Doing daga 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 da. Yes, you want a difference in sound, but I would not prefer to hear such a drastic difference in sound. Again, they're gonna be like the judges are gonna be 10 feet away from you, and they'll be able to catch nuance. So I would say try to soften your approach a little bit so it's not so marching band-esque.
I think that's really good advice. I think, did you feel like there was more balance in the four mallet version and it kind of switched to more of a marching approach there in that second half?
Yeah, that's what it felt like to me.
I think so too. And so I think Quentin, the touch you have in the four mallets can kind of be maintained. You've got some pretty articulate mallets that you don't have to necessarily do like an accent tap here, because we're still forte. You know, it's the same volume here to here. It's great advice. Quentin, any questions about some of the feedback or anything you wanted specifically talked about?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, thank you for the advice.
Yeah.
No problem. You're doing a lot of, I mean, there's just, from all the stuff we've seen from this session to last session, a lot of amazing, really positive things coming out of you all for the work you're putting in. Any final questions or things about primaries, secondaries? Make sure you're practicing sight reading. That's one of those things that you think, Scarlett, will come back to you because that's a good question. I'm excited to hear it. Make sure you're practicing your sight reading because that's one of those things that can really separate you. If you know, a lot of people are going to play these primaries well, like you've heard. But the sight reading can really make a difference. And practice all the accessories, not just tambourine or not just triangle and crash cymbals, but tambourine and bass drum. You know, if you're going to sight read on accessory instruments, that can show up as well, and you don't want to be surprised with an instrument you've never practiced, like tambourine. Scarlett, what's your question?
What mallets were those? It
Ooh.
And either of them can answer, but what were they?
Quentin, go ahead first.
I used Robert Van Sice mallets. I think they're M114s. I think so. They're the medium ones.
Okay, there's a
Van Dyke said?
113 and 114. 114 probably medium hards, but could be that it's good to have a medium hard for this
They
etude.
could have been a little worn, so yeah.
Let me just confirm that. You said Van Sice M114?
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
And
I
then
just used medium hard mallets. I use for like my band already supplied. I don't know what I can try and find them, but yeah.
they look like the Ian Groms. I might be
Yeah, I
mistaken.
think
Vic
you're
Firth,
right. I think you're right.
probably medium hard. I'm not certain.
I was going to say there are some other mallets out there. I don't remember what model. I can look, but there's some IPs that our students are using, and they're not the big Casellas or anything, but there's some other mallets. And I think I'm going to talk for just a second before we go about sight reading.
Yeah, we'll shift over to you. I'll mention real quick. The ones that oh, hold on, let's see if I have it. Oh, I didn't pull it up. I like the William Mersch mallets for this one. Um, let's see, the Mersch red tape black yarn. Does anyone know what the model number those are? IP 503. And those work well for the faster stuff. And they're not too hard on the hard side. They're very similar to the Van Sices, but they're lightweight. Van Sices are really lightweight too. So it's not like big marching mallets. Rick, do you want to talk about sight reading for a second?
Yeah, especially for those that haven't done it before. And I usually do timpani room, which is not much different. But I've done the mallet room as well. But the only time the judge will probably talk to you will be right before the sight reading. So when you go in the room, you get your stuff ready, just go ahead and play your thing because they got ready before you came in the room. So they're ready to go. But then they'll say, your sight reading is on the stand, turn it over and take about 30 seconds to look at it. So hopefully it's there and the kid before you didn't take it. So turn the sight reading over, start looking at it. And if you take too long, the judge will say, go ahead and begin your sight reading. If you take just a reasonable amount of time, but look at the things you need to look at. Look at the key signature and the tempo and glance over it as quick as you can, but don't take too long because when they tell you to begin your sight reading, you've probably taken too long.
Sight reading is another big separator when you're trying to break a tie between two great prepared players. Whoever sight reads better for sure gets bumped up.
Well, in the percussion, you get 250 points. You get 100 points from each judge, and then you get 50 points alone for sight reading. So that can easily make the difference.
Now, just to clarify, would you lose points if the judge said you should start now, or
No,
okay?
no, they're just going to judge you on your sight reading.
So if I were to give advice based on that, I would say basically look at it until they tell you your time is up, because you might be really nervous and you might think you've looked at it for 30 seconds and you've only looked at it for 10. And then you just start.
Right. No,
and you have, and so I
it's
would,
not bad for them to tell you to begin your sight reading, but
if I were wanting an edge, I would take every last second that I could use and just make sure I'm looking at the entire etude, not just the first bar,
Now your first round may be different, maybe a little more lax than the second round, but I don't know what will happen in your district.
Awesome. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Braden.
Just like a question in general. Say you make it on like multiple instruments, like you make it on like both mallets and snare. Like, is there like a way they'll decide like what you get put on, like based on scores, or is that like, do they let you choose?
I can answer that. They let you choose, but you have to choose beforehand.
Okay. So it's like if I make it on like mallets versus like making it on snare, I specifically want to do snare.
Yeah, you have, but they will see on your application that if you got first in both, you have to tell them before your audition, I want to play snare. So then that's what you would get.
Right. Okay.
Okay, perfect. If you think of questions, feel free to reach out. Real quick, I want to thank Rick and Josh for their time tonight and just their efforts, always doing great things for the state. Rick, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, if you go to kypercussion.com, there's a new link on there for videos. And you can see the last two sessions with Chad Floyd and Brian Mason. So we don't have to, just kypercussion.com, video link on the top, and that'll take you to the YouTube page.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, and I will send a video out or some of that YouTube playlist to everybody who signed up for these days, knowing that not everybody could be at everything. So you'll get some information on the things that you missed. We'll get the snare drum video uploaded to that too. So thank you all so much for your time. And again, it's great to hear you. It's great to hear you play. I hope you got some valuable information. But thank you for spending the evening with us, and good luck with everything. If you need anything, please feel free to reach out.